Hi, this is Greg Kilstrom. Welcome to Season 3 of the Agile World, where we discuss customer and employee experience, organizational and workforce transformation, and how business can adapt and continually improve in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed in this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles, or get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, now available on Amazon and other retailers. Hi, my name is Greg Kilstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Today we're going to talk about the importance of planning for meaningful customer experience measurement across multiple platforms and systems, where strategic planning and connections between data sources are crucial. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Dushyant Mitra, Director of Professional Services and Partner Experience and Practice Success at Medallia. Dushyant, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. It's great to be here.
Let's start with a little background on you and what you do. Why don't you talk a little bit about Medallia and what you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. Medallia is an experience management solution. We operate in the customer and employee experience management space, but also in the product experience and the citizen experience world. We essentially capture sentiment across the entire customer journey lifecycle, right, through multiple signals, and essentially help customers fall in love with the companies that they interact with. My role, I've been with the company for close to 7 years now, and I've had a variety of roles within professional services. As of now, I'm focused on our partner practice. I help our various partner organizations in helping them build successful Medallia practices within their organizations and also in building joint solutions with them.
Great. Well, yeah, I'm definitely a fan of Medallia. I've had many customers over the years use various products, so I'm glad to
Awesome.
have you on the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that critical task of customer experience measurement. It's something that I feel strongly about, and it's a tough one to crack sometimes. But
Yeah. Yeah.
let's talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that arise. So as we know, customer experience doesn't just occur on a single channel. It happens across many channels, platforms, online, offline, pretty much every which way you can imagine. What kind of challenges does this create with companies that are trying to measure CX?
Yeah, that's a really good question and a great point to start with, right? Today's world does include enabling multiple channels or signals, as we call them. A common challenge that we see our customers face is that they really have to put together a complex technology stack almost, to implement all of these channels, right? You of course need your CRM solution, your point of sale, ERP, etc. But then there's billing, invoicing, e-commerce, social, contact center, digital. It's a long list, right? So
Yeah.
today's customers interact with companies in a wide variety of ways, right? And the companies themselves have to constantly evolve, or they have to stay agile, to keep up with these changing channels, right? Years ago, your customer would write you letters. Today, they tweet at you. They talk about you on Facebook. They've even started leaving video reviews, right? So the landscape is constantly changing. So that, I think, is the primary challenge, enabling these channels. Once you do that, you also have to ensure you have a consistent experience irrespective of what the channel is, right? If I'm a customer and I walk into a store and I have a great experience with a retailer, I want that same great experience when I interact with them over the contact center as well, right? If I don't, that will not fly. Once you manage the consistent experience as well, then comes the meaty part, right? Like, how do you consolidate all of the data that you're capturing across these different channels and collect all of these signals and data so that the customer interactions and complaints can be analyzed, right? You can draw insights and patterns from that, right?
Yeah.
You can draw out insights, but sometimes even that is not enough. You have to start operationalizing your customer experience, right? That is where you win. Once you operationalize it, you start connecting with your customers. You predict their issues. You start resolving escalations. All of that becomes an important part, right? And
Yeah.
by the way, like, all of this applies to both B2B and B2C organizations, right? Business customers can be as demanding, if not more sometimes, than end consumers as well. So it's a wide application range.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to add another dimension to that as well. So not only could a customer be interacting with? I mean, I use an example of, a consumer could be walking in a retail store, browsing
Hmm.
on their mobile device for prices, walking the
Yeah,
aisles of the store, and then go home and buy it on Amazon after all of that, and
exactly.
all that happens. And so they're not only are they concurrently on multiple channels and devices during a stage in the journey, but now let's take it a step further and say across the entire journey, you also have to piece all those things together as well.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that organizations need to keep in mind when attempting to do that as well?
It all, I think it all starts with the right design of the actual customer journey itself, right? It has to be done from the customer's perspective. That's why things like design thinking are such a powerful tool in CX, especially when you're doing the initial journey mapping exercise, right? You step into the shoes of the customer. You have a wide variety of inputs and angles to understand how the customer is feeling, I know, as they go through the journey, and then you identify those moments that matter. These are the moments that ensure that your customer is delighted to interact with your company, with your product versus that of a competitor, right? So once you've designed the actual journey, then you start the defining phase, right? You identify all the different data sources, formats, cadence. I mean, we could get into a whole discussion around data architecture, but that's
Right, right.
probably a good topic for a different podcast.
Yeah.
This is kind of also where you start identifying and creating your customer data objects, right? And having all the right attributes that you might want, to map your journey, and also metadata, like to be able to describe the customer themselves. I think the third component, of course, once those initial two steps are done, you've designed the journey, you've defined the data elements, now you start the development, right? You can go down the route of establishing, if you want, a full scale data lake, right? If your organization is of that size and if you have that kind of budget available. If not, you could very well also use a situation like a solution like Medallia to consolidate all of your customer experience data from all of your different touch points, no matter what the signals are, into Medallia as a one-stop shop. We actually support that for a number of our clients, right? So that's kind of how I would describe it. You design, you define, and then you like develop.
That's for a lot of organizations, connecting the data sources. I mean, that's an initiative and a project and a multi-year transformation exercise, kind of all on its own. But
Totally.
from my perspective, like, that's the beginning, right? That's only the start. When that's done, then you can really start doing the work. I know people are in the middle of a digital transformation, or probably um, not thrilled to hear that, but it's true. It's like all this work kind of
Right.
needs to get done in order to really start doing the work. Um,
Yeah.
what do as you work with companies and partners, what do you recommend to companies to keep in mind from the start? Because again, it's not just a matter of connecting wires and data and dots and stuff like that. What do you recommend that
Right.
they keep in mind so they can really start that meaningful measurement once those pieces are connected?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I couldn't agree more. The real work does start once everything is set up and launched. I think the key thing to remember is that the world of customer experience is not a technology challenge. It in my opinion, is a human challenge, right? It's
Yeah.
not just the journey mapping and the data integrations, like you said, but it's also things like governance, cultural transformation, setting up the right metrics and the right targets, and then continuing to be nimble and agile so you can change your approach as your business evolves, right? The whole angle of course, employee experience plays a huge role as well, right? Happy employees make happy customers.
Yeah.
So one thing that companies can keep in mind right from the beginning is to think of CX as an evolving cultural transformation program, not as an IT implementation project, right? Those two things are very different, right? Our most successful customers are the ones that pay attention to the operationalization of the solution and not just the technical aspects, right? We even have an entire CX advisory team and a strategy analytics team that helps our customers do exactly that. So if there's one thing you want to remember that it's an evolving cultural transformation program.
The other thing to keep in mind is just collecting data. It's relatively easy to collect a lot of data,
Right.
and there's data lakes and there's all sorts of ways to do that. But how do you work with an organization to prioritize? It's one thing to have the information; it's another thing to take the time and the effort and
Yeah.
the focus to prioritize and do something about it. So, where should an
Mhm.
organization start when they have all this great data, when they have all that other stuff sort of out of the way? Like, how should they think about prioritizing?
Right, right. I have all the data. What do I do with it now, right? And
Yeah,
I promise I won't use this as a cop out answer, but every client really is different, right?
sure,
Based on
sure.
what they currently do, what they've done in the past, what exactly they're trying to change and impact, right? All of that contributes to defining where to start. I can run through a few examples. Like we've seen customers pick transactional touch points, for example, that have the largest volume of interactions, right? And use that as a starting point. So, so that they can maximize the impact, while others might want to start really small and sort of have the approach of let me pilot this and see how it goes, right? Some companies want to start with wide relationship programs to try and understand broad CX and brand perspectives, while others might want to start with a big bang. We obviously have clients that start with the whole I'm going to capture 20 signals across 15 different journey touch points, right? So in reality, it does vary a lot, but the key is to find that approach that works for you and critically for your organization's change appetite. I think that's very important, right? You don't want to start so small that there's no change noticeable. And you also don't want to start so large that all of your employees are tired of all the changes that are happening, right? So identify what works for your situation and then again be open to expanding and evolving in the future. That's what will make your CX program a huge success.
Yeah, I like that. And one follow up to that is the how about the teams that you've seen that have made this successful? Is it how many teams across an organization? How diverse, I guess, as far as discipline should
Mhm.
an organization be thinking when they're planning something like this?
In our most largest complex clients, we've usually seen a mix of a centralized governance model or maybe a distributed governance model, right? You always need to identify an application owner, a solution owner, like someone who is giving that guidance of how this program should evolve. And then you usually want to develop champions between your different regions or business units, people who are necessarily not in customer experience, but are tied to the success of the program. I think having that sort of a split really helps.
And then as far as the measurements themselves, I've written a fair
Mhm.
amount about this as well, but there's a lot of the kind of go-to customer experience measurements, whether it's NPS or
Right.
on the employee side ENPS or CSAT,
Hmm.
CES. There's these standards that are used, and I think despite some limitations, I think they have their place. But what's the downside of using those either not even
Yeah.
necessarily exclusively, but using those as the primary measurement with CX and what have you seen that's worked well?
It's true that we have so many options, right? We have so many metrics that you can follow, and you can often get a little lost and miss the forest from the trees when you do something like that. One downside of being over obsessed around metrics is score watching, right? That can be a huge downside. Like I said, CX is really a cultural transformation project, but you have to watch out for your employees and even your leadership from becoming score watchers, right? Or target chasers, right? That is not the direction in which you want your culture to
Yeah,
transform. You have to remember that um, the metric itself is kind of like the car you're driving. It's not the destination that you want to go to, right? The destination is more things like customer centricity, right? Having a culture of customer delight and ensuring that you're developing empathy and understanding towards your customers' needs so that you can provide them a better experience. How we combat this regularly is we actually apply a number of technologies to understand the qualitative aspects of the experience as well, and not just the quantitative, right? So it's not just the score that your customer or your employee gives you in a survey. It's also analyzing the text that they leave in a comment, right? The tone of their voice, when they call into your contact center and you're analyzing their voice recording, right? Even the visual cues that they drop when they submit a feedback through video. We use our technology to analyze these text submissions, audio recordings, and even video playback as well. It's pretty cool stuff.
That's great. Yeah, I strongly believe that it takes a lot of different types of metrics
Right,
to do
right,
that, and some of those are, what you're saying, the customer facing, and then there's also the product side of things too, right? So like, how is a
right.
product performing? How are processes being, some of that comes into cultural stuff, like how are processes improved, and even, developed within an organization as well. So definitely, I like that you're thinking that holistic way there. That's
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a great point. When you actually end up doing the data analysis, your customer might answer maybe 5, 10 questions in a survey. You don't want to give them a 50-question survey, right?
right.
But you also want to capture those different operational metrics, right? Was the delivery on time? Was the supply chain healthy? What was the status of the footfall in the retail store? Like those kind of metrics really are the ones that add a lot of color to your overall painting that you're trying to paint in trying to understand how your customer is doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think also there's value in there's value in all of it, right? So, but there's
Hmm.
value in the real time insights that you're able to get. That, I think, having done a bit in the behavioral side of things as well, like the biases that we have, so recency and anchoring and all
Yeah,
the, it's like we're either biased by the first thing we saw or the last thing we saw, or the,
right,
some major momentous thing in between. But those real time insights that are gathered like on the spot are able to highlight things where, man, we're lucky that the thing they remembered was a good one, but they had a terrible experience all the way towards the beginning of that. So
right, right.
how are you seeing organizations kind of deal with the real time versus the, kind of after the fact surveys?
I think it completely depends on the extent of the maturity of the technology systems, right? That
Yeah.
becomes an important component here. So, like I said, when you start a customer experience program, there's obviously the people angle, the actual survey, the customer angle, but also the technology angle. So you have to try and identify opportunities to try and make your data exchanges real time, right? As accurate as possible, hopefully in the same overall data architectural framework so that you're understanding all these different systems because they'll be talking a different language, but you need to like consolidate across all of them. Um,
Yeah.
the airline industry is actually a really good example where airlines are try and get consistent customer experience data across in real time across your entire say flying experience, right from when you look for a flight and book one to when you check in, you drop your bags, you board the airplane, and then your in-flight experience as well. Like across that entire landscape, a lot of airline companies are trying to get more real-time data so that they can resolve issues and recover potential, bad customer situations in real time as well. It's a really exciting space.
That's really great, because I mean, there's almost nothing like traveling to, it's a high stress, time sensitive,
Yeah, yeah.
transaction, and all that stuff. So that's really interesting.
Especially these days, right? Like it's become
Yeah.
a lot more sensitive these days as well.
Well,
Hmm.
one last question before we wrap up here. So just as doing CX measurement well takes a lot of coordination between platforms, what you do in your joint solution development efforts with your partners takes coordination across teams and their solutions. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that, and how it helps your end customers achieve better results?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is something I'm actually really excited about. As part of my current role, I'm leading an effort to try and identify, design, and help build joint solutions with our partners, right? And these partners include the largest consulting firms, systems integrators. There's a bunch of other enterprise grade software solutions as well, and also boutique advisory firms and market research firms also. So what we basically do in joint solutions is the whole one plus one is equal to three. No, we're not bad at maths. What that basically means is that we identify something that a partner is really good at, right? And then we combine it with our powerful technology to create a brand new go-to-market vehicle that can be custom designed to solve for very complex and specific use cases. When I say we identify something that a partner is good at, it could be a methodology that they use. It could be an approach to CX or employee experience or citizen experience that they follow, right? Or it could also be a complex like tech stack that they're putting together. And then we try and identify how Medallia can enhance that stack from a technology standpoint, right? How do we plug in the experience into that overall solution that they're offering to a customer? So the combined power of these ideas from the best consulting research and tech firms in the world with our analytical and signal capturing solutions has created some, very interesting ideas, and it solves some very interesting problems for our clients.
I would imagine that also helps with some of the things we were talking about at the very beginning, the connecting the dots and measurement. Sometimes again, that's just reconciling data and integrating systems. It takes so much effort and
Right.
attention. So is that one of the big benefits out of this as well?
Absolutely. A big component of these joint solutions is incorporating our technology partners like our ISVs to be able to create solutions that can be easily replicable, right? So if I have a standalone CX Medallia solution, but implementing that over an SAP system is so different from a Salesforce system. But if I can create a solution that I can easily replicate, it's almost like building an app, right, on the Medallia platform that you can then replicate and install for all of my customers that are using X backend systems. And so it standardizes the process of that implementation. It increases your time to value because you accelerate your value realization. And it also actually makes it a lot safer, especially when you standardize these technology integrations. Data security, data cleanliness, all of those things are incorporated in the design, so you don't fall out of line or fall out of your lane too much when dealing with sensitive customer data as well.
Well, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
I would say LinkedIn is probably the best way. Well, I mean, sadly, I don't have a podcast of my own, not yet. So, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect, chat more, and exchange ideas.
Well, again, I'd like to thank Dushyant Mitra, for Director of Professional Services, Partner Experience, and Practice Success at Medallia, for joining the show. Thanks again for listening to The Agile World with Greg Kilstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Kilstrom. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, from my website at theagile.world.